We're up to this last halacha in the first parak of Temidin UMusafin. So Rambam says, "Ta'u o shagagu, or filu hezidu." That's Rabbi Shimon's. That's not Rabbi Shimon's. Rabbi Shimon says, "Hezidu lo yakridu." If they made a mistake, or they were unwitting, or even if they did this on purpose for whatever reason, the lo yakridu tamid shel shachar, and they did not bring the morning offering, the lamb that's supposed to be offered every single morning. Yakrivu tamid shel ben Rabbi. So you can still bring, they should still bring the afternoon lamb. So that's every single day of this, that the base of Mikdash hasn't been built. Sometimes we miss it. Every morning we've missed the Korban Tamid. So we should have one in the afternoon, even if, for whatever reason, we missed it. Rabbi Shimon says, no, you missed it on purpose, so you shouldn't bring the afternoon one, wait till the next morning. But when was this said? When the altar has already been inaugurated. It means it's a veteran altar. If it's a new altar, they just built it now. They took apart the old one for whatever reason, or there hasn't been an altar standing on the temple in a while. So they haven't ever offered anything on this altar. So they shouldn't do it lechatchila. But perhaps it would be permissible. But before the fact, they should not offer the afternoon lamb on the altar. We only inaugurate the altar of the burnt offering with the morning. Okay, that's the we saw this in a few other cases. It says this is only inaugurated with a certain type of offering. Usually that's the it's before the fact, but the avad, you have no choice, so you can do it anyways. Next mitzvah, this is a fun one. Hold on a second. This is a fun one. Most people, like all these other commandments, have never had a chance to actually engage in these, but God willing, we should have a chance. Yudvada say, it is a positive commandment that there always be a fire burning on the altar. In this case, it's easier. The Trump says Eish, Revi, Tamid. There's a Tavir there. To Kav al HaMizbeach. The fire should always be burning on the altar. Now, no one ever says there's no concept in Judaism, Eish Tamid. It says Lahalot Ner Tamid. You're supposed to constantly have a candle burning, going up. We have this Yiddish expression, a Ner Tamid, as though it's a compound noun, a constant candle burning. No one's ever talked about an Eish Tamid. Okay. Because I guess the tropes really don't give. In that case, it says Lahalot Ner Tamid, but it's harder to break them apart because it's just a tip. Here, you have Ravia, you say, Eish Tamid, so you're not going to put them together. This is a mafsik, this is also a mafsik, so no one ever says an Eish Tamid. Even though, what do you have here? The fire came down from heaven in the temple. There was a heavenly fire that descended on the altar and stayed there. It was constantly burning there, and that's what consumed the sacrifices. Mitzvah lavi eish b'na'adyot. It's still a commandment to bring fire from an ordinary source. That means human-made fire. Shnemar v'nathanu b'nei Aaron kohanim eish al hamizbeach. The sons of Aaron, the Kohanim, should put fire in the mez. Okay, I disagree with the way Machon Mamre put on this punctuation. I'll show you why forthwith. Look at this. See if we can find this verse over here. I'm copying it over here so I can show you with the Tamim as it is. Thank God for all these sources. See? It says here, this is the halfway point of the verse. This is one verse. This is one half. And this half itself is divided over here. The tipka is the biggest stop among all these before the etnach. So it says, and over here, we're looking over here. Okay. There's this dash over here. I don't know why they put a dash or a comma over here. Okay, there shouldn't be a comma here, whatever it is. I would have put a comma or something else over here and nothing over here, based on the way the cup is broken up. But the Machon Mamre people that followed the strange Yemenite practice of treating a tavir as a greater stop than a tipka, which you could find in all sorts of other sources. They put commas there, and sometimes they treat also ravia as a greater stop, just like you see over here. There's a comma. There's a comma over here. I don't know why. I guess because the tipka is over here, so there's no nafta. So they could get away with that. But if there was, let's say, the extension of this pasuk, lo tichbeh, like you have in the Korean, so you definitely should not have a comma over here. It said eish tamid tu commas beach, comma lo tichbeh. Okay, so they changed it around a little bit. Another issue is this is written. This verb over here is in the past tense. The fire came down from heaven. In Korean, we have it with yorida, which is the present tense. Yorida is a more obscure form of yoredet, coming down. And Makbili also has it in the past tense. So what does it mean? What's the difference between if the fire came down or the fire used to come down? So there's means there's like a hitchad shoot, a constant renewal. There's this fire from God that was always on the temple. So that was always on the altar. If you read it like Korean, you could say that the fire was something that was constantly there, and it refreshed itself if for whatever reason it was missing, God restored it. There's a report. Hold on, we'll get to read the end of this halacha. Hold on a second. Come in. There's a report in the Talmud. It's in Yoma. I think I wrote here. It's a kafal. It's hard to remember the pim. It brings the biblical sources for the fact that the fire came down from heaven. Where does it say that? Well, it says that when they inaugurated the Mishkan, and it's in Parsha Shmini, right before Nadav and Avihu died, fire came down from before God. It says, "But Eish," not down. It says it came out. And like Rabbi Ari Kaplan points out, when the fire came out, it came down from the sky, just spontaneously ignited on the Mizbeach. Did it come out of the Holy of Holies? And the same verb is used for the fire that consumed Nadav and Avihu. So this fire was there. And then it says that when Solomon inaugurated the first temple, so too, he was answered by fire from heaven. And we're missing a similar verse describing the second temple. We don't have in the book of Ezra, which describes the construction, the inauguration of the second temple, we don't have an explicit verse saying that a new fire came down from heaven. So the Chazal say that Reitiha Revutza Kakelev, and the sages say there was some Tanaim reported they saw the fire in the second temple. It didn't look like a lion that consumed the sacrifices. It was basically squatting there when a kelev is lying down. That's a dog. It was there. It was lapping basically some of the korbanos. It was a smaller fire that didn't seem to have the same power, but it still was there. Okay, so that was a feature of the temple. Baboker or chimnitzin. In the morning, they arranged the wood. And they make a large pyre, a P-Y-E-R, on the altar. Okay, a great one. It says this is the biggest one they make. It says regarding the altar that the Kohen should burn eitzim, it means firewood, every single day on the altar. There's also a commandment to take two, I wouldn't say logs, it means two planks of wood with the morning sacrifice every single day. More, which is beyond, that is in addition to this pyre that they arranged. And the Kohen should burn upon it this when he brings the offering. Aleha means on the korban, the olah, wood. In this case, it's plural, but means firewood. They also bring two planks of wood to burn on the altar with the afternoon tamid. It says they should arrange wood on the fire. Once again, I don't agree with the placement of this comma over here. And we have a tradition that says when it's the Kohanim are supposed to arrange more wood on the fire, it's talking about the afternoon sacrifice. We said before, what is it? The Gezarim. It says in where was it? In what was it? Yisuri Mizbeach, yeah. Yisuri Mizbeach, it's two boards, one almost square each. Okay, that's why I said it, like planks. It wasn't a log. It says it's one almost square. So obviously it's not the way it comes, just raw tree. They would actually, cut it to shape, so it would be fitting for the altar. These two boards, planks that they would bring up as firewood, it was brought by two quantum, one each. Each one has one in his hands. It says they shall do it, means plural. There it says basically it's implied that there are two kohanim who do this, but in the morning it's just one kohen. These three pyres of fire. They make on top of the altar every single day. Rishona Maracha Gedolah. The first is the great pyre, the big one, and we'll see the map forthwith. Shala Makrivina Tamid Im Shar Korbanot, and upon it they bring the morning sacrifice along with all the other sacrifices. You have to burn a lot of sacrifices. You need a big pile of wood to do it. There was a second pyre to its side that was smaller. They used that fire to take fire. In this case, Aish means coals. Coals have a halachic status as fire, just solid fire. Normally, what you and I call flames, what is that? That's just I guess it's gases that give off certain colors because of their excited electrons. The gases there are hot, so it excites the electrons, and they're jumping around and falling down to energy levels and giving off different colors of light. That's basically to see fire isn't necessarily a chemical. It's not. I guess you could say it's not its own inherent gas. Just the gases around the thing that's burning start to show different colors. It's the surrounding air. And people will correct me if I'm wrong there. So it says here, it's talking about physical fire, as Chazal described it, which is, solid fire, which is coals. So they take it in the fire pan in order to burn the Torah every single day. They would take a fire pan, bronze pan or golden pan. They stick it into this burning pile of wood in order to withdraw the coals, and they use that to burn the incense. There's a third pyre. Nothing's upon it. They're not using it for any actual practical purpose. It is there in order to, fulfill the commandment to always have fire burning on the temple. Like you saw before, there should always be fire burning. In this case, once again, I don't think necessarily I would have put a comma over here, whatever it is. Eish tamid to kadal mizbeach. When it says that this is the burnt offering that is on its place on the altar, and the moked is where the fire is always going. This verse referring to the big fire, the one upon which they basically burn all the korbanos. Veisham is beach tu kadbo, which is also these all verses taken from the beginning of what you and I know as Parshas Tzav. This is the second fire which they used to get the coals for burning the incense. Veisham is beach tu kadbo. In subsequent verse, that's referring to this third pyre. That's the third pyre, which is there just to keep the fires going. If you have limbs of sacrifices that hadn't been burned overnight for whatever reason, they would put them on the side of they would put them next to the Marach HaGedolah, the big pyre. I was saying here, there's someone sent in a question. We saw the dimensions of the Mizbeach when we were first describing it. It was actually quite large. The Mizbeach as it existed in the Second Temple was 32 by 32 amos at its base, and then it was basically tapered such that by the time you got to the top part, it was only 20 something amos by 20 something amos the surface where they could burn the sacrifices, and there was also they left sort of space around the perimeter so the Kohanim could walk around and do what they had to do. So it was a very large, basically a rooftop surface where a lot of fires going. In the Mishkan, the altar was much smaller than that, so it didn't leave room for many of these things. We had arba'ah v'esrim amma v'arba'ah tefachim, 24 ammas and 4 tefachim by 24 ammas by 4 tefachim, which is still quite large. 24 ammas is basically 36 feet. So we're talking about by an area that's more than 36 by 36 feet, quite a lot, or basically shorthand, talking 12 meters by 12 meters or so. It's quite large. Originally, the altar was much smaller than that. It was like 5 by 5. So you had a lot less space to do this. It could very well have been that in the way things were done in the Mishkan, they didn't have all 3 fires going. They probably just had one big fire. We're going to see that there's something else also at the top of the Mishkan, at the top of the altar, and that's a machlokas rishonim, what exactly it was. And it also says in Parshas Bamidbar that as part of the transportation of the altar, they had to cover it, just like all the other major vessels of the Mishkan. Everything was covered in a ritual manner by the Kohanim before the Bnei Kahath had to pick them up and carry them on their travels. So it says, V'dishinu et hamizbeach. They would basically clean off the altar from the ashes and the coals that were there so they could travel, and then they cover all over the altar. There's midrashic ideas that they didn't actually put out the fire. The divine fire that was always there, somehow was able to stay there. And even when they covered it over with this basically a leather cover and a woolen cover, it didn't burn through it and it didn't have any damage. Okay, whatever it may be. Aval, Avery, well, we read that one already. Okay, fine. So they put these on the side of the altar. What is it? I did the calculation over here. Basically, here's the number. So one of the guys can correct me if I'm wrong here. The first altar was 5 by 5 ammas, which is 25 square ammas, which we'll say is if each amma is 48 centimeters, so that gives us 5.76 meters squared, or 56.25 square feet on its upper surface. Whereas the second temple's altar was, what do we have here? 24 ammas and 4 tefachim squared, which is 136.4 square meters, or 1,334 square feet. Okay, so you see there's a major difference. Basically, the original altar had an area on its top surface 20 times smaller than that of the last altar as it was. And God willing, we'll be able to build an altar of similar size as of tomorrow. Let's see. Okay, now there's also an Isra involved in this. What is that? Someone who extinguishes the fire of the altar is to be lashed. So thou shalt not. The fire should not be put out. It's written twice here. See? Don't put it out, or it should not go out. Even one coal, takes a piece of coal out of the fire and extinguishes it, throw some water on it, that's already the prohibition. Even if he were to take the coal off the altar and put it on the floor, let's say, and then he throws a cup of water onto it, he is to be lashed. If the coal is already in the fire pan, or he took some fire, took a piece of wood on fire so he could use it to light the menorah within the temple. Okay. If he then, the original intention was to use these fires, this coal, to burn the Ketores or to light the altar, light the menorah. If he ends up extinguishing it even on the top surface, the roof of the altar, he is exempt. It's now been removed for a different mitzvah. It's not there to be the fire of the altar. No, it's been picked up. Now it's the fire for the Ketores or the fire for the menorah. So it's a different fire, and there we have no explicit prohibition. They're no longer considered fire of the altar. So one who would extinguish them is not to be punished with lashes. When one of the Kohen is arranging the wood of this great pyre, he sets it up at the eastern side of the altar. That's if the ramp basically was on the eastern side of the Kohen, going up the ramp goes westward. So when he gets to the top of the ramp, encounters the eastern part of the temple. No, sorry, no, that's incorrect. He goes up from the south. The ramp was on the south. When he's going up, he's basically heading northbound on uh, on the altar, and he encounters the southernmost part of the altar. So he's to arrange the pyre on the right side. There's a picture over here. See it in good additions to the Rambam. They show you pyres over there. Okay, the main pyre on the basically the southeast corner, which is for the Kohen who just got up to the top of the altar. It's immediately on his right. That's where he arranges it. Let's see here. V'yu marecha. It should look like he started setting it up from the eastern side. Ooh, this is a big machlokas. What does that mean, marecha? And you should also put space between these planks of wood. Why? Oxygenation. No, oxygenation. You have to make sure that there's way for the air to get in between the piece of wood. If you just stack up wood nice and tight, you're not going to be able to make a good fire. They teach in Boy Scouts you have to have space. You have to stagger it so that it can be aerated and the fire will be burning there. Hold on 1 second. Okay, let's continue. We have to stagger the wood so it will burn properly. Hold on 1 second. The ends of the inner planks. You'd see this, that basically this pyre should go until it gets to the big pile of ash that's in the center of the Mizbeach. And that's what's called the apple. Okay, there was this big pile of ashes. It was considered a good sign. It shows you how the Jewish people had brought so many sacrifices to God, and they kept this decorative pile of ashes there, right in the middle. So this is not exactly agreed upon by everybody. Let's see, for example, over here, the printers here have a situation where Rashi disagrees. Let me find it exactly in the text over here. Yeah, this third pyre, what did it have on it? According to Rashi and Rishonim, this other pyre, they used it actually to supplement the main pyre. It wasn't just there. This third pyre, keep the fire going. How did it make the fire going? Because they use it. They took from this fire to put into this large pyre that was on, like I said, the southeast corner. They used it to keep it going in case of need. What's this marecha business? Well, we're talking about planks of wood. So you could basically, the way the Rambam has it is, some are arranged east-west and some are arranged north-south. Okay, that seems to make sense. The Rambam seems to say that chazitei mizrach means it's the view. Okay, its front is to the east. Okay, but others, like the Ravid, we're about to read it, say it means that you have to have them arranged east-west, always facing east-west. It means, I guess, between from someone walking into the temple courtyard from would be the east side and towards the temple edifice, and not north-south. Okay. According to the Rosh, he says that he would try to make it so that there would be just enough space between the woods so that the fire would keep going. Let's read how the Ravid has this. It says, it says in the Mishneh, its front should be toward the east. Lo kivin yafeh elo umar shelo yu hagzarim holchin safun v'rom el mizrach umarav. He's basically saying, like we just read, the Ravad says that you shouldn't have the planks of wood arranged east, north, south, rather east, west. And that's how you could have it, that the heads of these logs are basically, these planks are touching the puach. Show a picture over here. I don't have a good way to show the picture. Okay, well, we'll skip that part. Shelo yarchiku malach regular kohanim sheya ama shelo yikaru v'lo yisarfu bigdehem. And he also has to make sure that they maintain the space where the Kohanim can walk around the perimeter of the Mizbeach, the outer Amma, so that their clothes don't get ripped in. They don't get burnt either. Masha Kasavta Sheadesh and Sheab Emsa Mizbeach Hunik Retapuach. That which the Rambam says, most people are familiar with this shot in the Rambam, that this big pile of ashes in the middle is called the Tapuach. Doesn't seem to be the case. Mar Ebidato Shaloya Sham Gavshushit Acheret Ela Tel Hadeshen Hamechunas Sham. He's basically showing, the Rambam is telling us that, in his opinion, it seems that this was an actual just pile of ash and not part of the altar structure that was basically sticking up at that point. But and this is a big mistake. Whoa, Rav is telling us something big here. Sharei Shaninu Echelu Ma'alin Ba'efer Al Gabe Hatapuach. It says that, right, we're going to read soon, they had something called Truma Sedeshin and Harama Sedeshin, removing the ashes from the altar in different steps. So it seems to imply, the way the Ravad says it, is that there was an actual structure, some sort of stone structure as part of the rest of the stone altar that was raised, like sort of a table in the middle of the altar. And that's where these ashes were piled. Okay? Assuming, and this is the Ravad's only assumption, the Rambam doesn't have this assumption, assuming that every single day the Kohanim, or the Kohen in this case, it doesn't really matter if it's done by one Kohen or many Kohanim, removed all the ashes every single day, how is there a tapuach there for the logs to be contacting when they were arranged in the southeast pyre? It must be the tapuach was a permanent structure. Okay, Rashi and Tosfos hold that held only once. It was too big. They hold it differently. Like they say, there was something that was special for holidays. Rambam says special for every day that they had this tapuach. Ravid says basically it wasn't there. It was actual structure of the Mishkan. The Mizbeach. V'chein amru. Also, there's a source that says Pamim she'alav kishlosh mil kor. Sometimes the tapuach had upon it like 300 cores, a very large volume of ashes. It says upon it. It doesn't say it was 300 cores of ashes. Upon the tapuach there was a stain. If the tapuach itself was just the floor of the mizbeach with a large pile of ashes, it should have said it. The tapuach itself was like 300 cores. Ela shehayasham tavla mirubat bivoha ama vehi esrim u'shtayim al esrim u'shtayim. Turns out there was actually this tavla, which is a tablet, means a big stone slab that was square. It had the height of an amma, which is about 48 centimeters high, and an area of 22 by 22. And this tapuach had a height of an amma. So wait a minute, didn't we know that there was a maximum height of mizbeach? Yeah, but it was basically as high as the horns of the altar along the sides. Remember, there's 4 horns at the side of the altar, at the different corners of the altar, which is also a very distinctive feature of ancient Hebrew and I guess even Israelite altars back in the day. Trying to look once again for the picture. So the altar basically had its flat roof, and it had the amma of the horns was technically 5 tefachim. Normally an amma is 6 tefachim, but this is one of those ammas that was 5 tefachim. So you had this structure in the middle of the altar. It was actually quite high. It continues. It was called tapuach because it was higher than everything that surrounded it. And it could also be that this structure wasn't perfectly square; it actually had the corners rounded to it, so it was round, so that there'd be room to have the pyres around it on the rest of the surface of the altar. Anything that's basically high and rounded is called tapuach. As we say in the Muda, makom yesh beoto makom kein tapuach. He's saying that there's a part of the female anatomy also that's a little bit raised. I think he's talking, whatever. Ask your father what he's talking about, or don't ask your father if you're ashamed about it. But basically, that's called a tapuach also. And it also says in Avodah Zarah, afal pi shenatal biyado v'natan l'tocha tapuach. Even though he took it in his hand and he put it in the tapuach area. And by the way, that's why I think that until now I've been reading this with tapuach as the traditional, nikud with a dot in the pay and a patach over here, tapuach. But it could be that it's not a noun and it's actually what the Rav is getting at is that this thing is an adjective. If it's an adjective, there's a kamatz under the tuf and no dot on the pay, so it would be properly tafuach. Makom tafuach l'mala me'ato makom. Some place that's bulging out. Okay, it doesn't mean the tafuach. It means a place that is bulging. Okay, different way to read it. Either way, what you see here is that whereas the Rambam held that there was a big pile of ashes in the middle of the temple's altar, and whatever. Sometimes it was bigger than others. In the case of the Ravad, he felt that it was an actual structural difference in the construction of the altar. Nowadays, when they show you models of what a mishkan, what a mizbeach is supposed to look like, where you have people who are building mizbeach, getting involved in these things, they typically assume, like the Rambam, that the tapuach was a large pile of ashes because most Rishonim seem to hold that way, and it came and went. Whereas the Rav held that no, it was an actual structure. So once again, we look forward to hearing or seeing we'll see that how this this dispute is resolved. That's all we have for tonight. We have to be heading out to services right now. So if you have any questions or comments, please do not be shy. And we'll close with a prayer that we see speedily in our days, the rebuilding the temple, the destruction of Israel's enemies, that we repent with full hearts, return to all the commandments, and particularly in this war, we see the kibush, gerush, and yashvut, the conquering of all parts of Eretz Yisrael, the removal of all of our enemies, and the resettlement of Am Yisrael in all its cities. God willing. Amen. Be well.